Every small town has its legends. Whispers of strange lights in the woods, unexplained sounds in the night, and shadows seen from the corner of the eye. Most fade into folklore, passed down only in stories told around campfires. But in the fall of 1903, one town in Iowa claimed they faced something far worse than a tale. The residents of Van Meter insisted they were stalked, hunted, by a creature that should not exist. Witnesses described a towering, bat-like monster, reeking of sulfur, its glowing horn casting a blinding beam of light. For 5 nights, it plagued the town. It shattered windows, left behind footprints like nothing anyone had seen before, and terrified even the most hardened men. Armed posses tracked it, shooting at it point blank, yet it survived. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. More than a century later, the story remains unsolved. Was it mass hysteria, a hoax, or did Van Meter truly face something from another world? The terror began on the night of September 29, 1903. U.S. businessman U.G. Griffith was walking home when he noticed a strange beam of light sweeping across the rooftops of the town. Thinking it was a burglar with a lantern, he approached, only to see something that made his blood run cold. Perched on a nearby building was a hulking creature, taller than a man, with enormous wings folded against its sides. Its horn glowed like a spotlight, blinding Griffith as it turned. Then, with a sickening hiss, it launched into the air, its wings beating the night with a thunderous sound. Griffith fled. The next night, Dr. Alcott, one of Van Meter's most respected citizens, was roused from sleep by a similar beam of light cutting through his bedroom window. Grabbing his revolver, he stepped outside. There it was again, the massive creature, crouched atop a telephone pole, its horn pulsating with an eerie glow. Alcott raised his weapon and fired 5 rounds directly at it. The bullet struck, but the monster didn't flinch. Instead, it unfurled its wings and drifted down silently like a phantom, the stench of rotting flesh filling the air. Overcome with fear, the doctor retreated into his house, barricading the door. On the 3rd night, another citizen, Clarence Dunn, was awakened by a strange noise. Stepping outside, he found the monster clinging to his neighbor's rooftop, its wings folded like a gargoyle. He too fired his weapon, and again the bullets passed through without effect. At this point, the town was in uproar. Something was stalking Van Meter, and it wasn't afraid of gunfire. The next night, the creature was seen by O.V. White, a local banker. It perched in the middle of the main street, blocking his way home. He fired his shotgun at it nearly point blank. To his horror, the monster only hissed and released an ear-piercing screech so loud it shattered glass. Townsfolk described it as half whistle, half roar, a sound that rattled bones and left ears ringing. By now, dozens of citizens had witnessed the beast. It left physical evidence. Strange 3-toed footprints, pressed deep into the earth, larger than any man's. The tracks were unlike those of a bird, reptile, or mammal, something entirely unknown. The terror reached its peak on the 5th night. A mob of armed men, determined to end the nightmare, tracked the creature to the abandoned coal mine at the edge of town. As they approached, an overpowering sulfuric odor burned their nostrils. From within the blackness of the mine, 2 glowing horns appeared. Not one creature, but 2. The second was even larger than the first. Both let out an unholy shriek that shook the ground. Beating their wings furiously, they soared into the night, diving at the men with blinding beams of light. The posse opened fire, shotguns and rifles thundering. The reports said the air was filled with smoke, the mine lit up like a battlefield. But when it cleared, the creatures remained unharmed. At dawn, the townsfolk gathered at the mine again. The creatures were gone. The shafts were silent. And from that day forward, they were never seen again. Newspapers across Iowa carried the story, quoting the town's most credible citizens. These were not drunks or pranksters. They were doctors, bankers, businessmen, men with reputations to protect. All told the same story. All insisted it was real. Skeptics say the Van Meter visitor was a mass delusion, sparked by fear and hysteria. Others argue it was a great horned owl, mistaken in the dark for something monstrous. But how do you explain the glowing horn? The sulfur stench? The fact that so many witnesses fired at it, and not a single bullet had an effect? Some cryptozoologists believe it was a prehistoric creature, a pterosaur-like beast that somehow survived extinction, living in the mines beneath the town until disturbed. Others believe it was something far more terrifying, an interdimensional entity, briefly crossing into our world before vanishing again. Even today, residents of Van Meter whisper of strange lights near the old mine, long since sealed. Some claim to hear the distant beat of wings on still nights. Others avoid the area altogether, unwilling to tempt fate. The Van Meter visitor remains one of America's most chilling unsolved mysteries. For 5 nights in 1903, an entire town was haunted by a winged monster that bullets couldn't kill. And then, like a nightmare at dawn, it was gone. But legends don't die. They wait. And if the stories are true, perhaps somewhere in the dark places of the earth, the visitor still waits, ready to return.